Yeah. מי שברך ימוצנו מקור הברכה לאבותינו. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. Ose shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'yakol Yisrael Leimeru. Amen. Oh, say shalom bimrama. Oh, yeah, say shalom. Aleinu ve'yakol Yisrael ve'imeru. Amen. So when I went to college, I went to the University of Michigan, and I learned a lot there, as you're supposed to learn in college, but I also learned a lot about what it meant to be a Michigander, because people who live in Michigan they're a little bit quirky. I learned how to walk into a snowstorm without hurting your shoulders or your neck, because people walk like that when they're there. I learned how to enjoy ginger ale, because they have this weird thing. Yeah, see, Caroline knows. They have this weird thing about a particular kind of Werner's ginger ale there. And I also learned that there was an American holiday that I had never known about, but that in Michigan they are very into. It is called Sweetest Day. Now, Sweetest Day is not just a holiday that is in Michigan. It's celebrated really in sort of all of the states around the Great Lakes. But Sweetest Day, I would say, is kind of a combination of Valentine's Day and Mother's Day and Secretary's Day. And I'm specifically saying secretaries, not administrative assistants, because this is a holiday that was created in the early 20th century. And it was a holiday that in many ways was really about women and feeling love towards the women in your life, love and also friendship and a little bit of charity. And you were supposed to celebrate this holiday by giving them sweets. Now, I'm sure you'll be shocked to know that Sweetest Day was actually invented by a candy company, but that doesn't make it any less valid. And it was a holiday that was really a pretty big deal, at least when I was living in Michigan. Now, I'm not telling you this because I think that you should go out and celebrate Sweetest Day. It's in October. We have enough holidays in October. You don't need to put anything else on there. But I'm sharing this with you because this week on the Jewish calendar, we're celebrating Tu B'Av. And people often refer to Tu B'Av as the Jewish Valentine's Day, but it's really not. It's really more like the Jewish Sweetest Day, because this is also a holiday that is primarily really about celebrating women. It is also, unlike Valentine's Day, not just about romantic love, but also about friendship and about caring for others. And what was the last piece I was going to say? Oh, and it is also a holiday that really was not celebrated until the early 20th century. Now, those are where the similarities stop, though, because Tu B'Av was not created that recently. It just wasn't really celebrated until then. We're not entirely sure when Tu B'Av was created. We know that they talk about it in the Mishnah, which was written in 200 CE, but by then, they're like, back in the old days when we celebrated Tu B'Av, and it's also not in the Tanakh at all. It's not in the Hebrew Bible. So it had to happen sometime, like between the celebration, or between the destruction of the temple and the creation of the Mishnah. So not a very long period. But what we hear about it in the Mishnah was that it was an amazing holiday. There's not a lot written about it, but they say that on this holiday, what would happen is that all of the unmarried women, they would go out into this one area of Israel, and they would all sort of dance around together, and all of the unmarried men could sort of stand there, and it was a matchmaking day. And everyone would find their matches. And all the girls would wear white, and part of what was so beautiful about that was that you weren't supposed to wear your own white clothes, you were supposed to borrow someone else's. And so what that meant is that maybe someone who had very, very fancy clothes would share her dress with someone else, so that when the boys are looking at you and deciding who that they want to marry, they're not just doing it based on how nice your clothes are. Okay, now I have to take a pause here. I'm going to show you my toenails. You at home can't see. My daughter said they had to get Barbie pink toenails. And so I'm going to pause for a Barbie moment here, just in case you've seen it or been part of these conversations. And I just want to acknowledge the fact that when we're talking about this holiday where all the girls would go out and the men would choose who they want, that there's maybe something about that that strikes us as a little bit patriarchal and maybe a little bit offensive, right? Like if you're looking at this through a modern lens, the idea, first of all, why did these women all have to find husbands? Even if they are wearing someone else's clothes, the guys are still choosing who they like based on their appearance, so it feels a little bit shallow and uncomfortable. Okay, yes. But we're reading this from a historical perspective, and we understand that at that time in history, a woman needed to be married to a man. A man was there to be able to provide a household for you and to be able to keep you safe and sort of give you a sense of purpose. And so as much as that may sort of negate everything that we believe about marriage and love now, we'll talk more about marriage and love later, at least then it was actually a lovely thing to do. And it was a truly joyous holiday. What we learn, in fact, in the Talmud is that this was almost the most joyous holiday. When they're introducing Tu B'Av, what they say is, there were no more joyous days for the Jewish people than Tu B'Av and... Does anyone want to guess what the other holiday was? Yes? Yeah, well, yes, absolutely. Say it again. Purim, absolutely. Purim would be wonderful, super fun, everyone has a great time. Maybe Rosh Hashanah, it's a Jewish New Year, Passover, there are all sorts of great Jewish holidays, but the Talmud says there were no more joyous days for the Jewish people on the Hebrew calendar than Tu B'Av and Yom Kippur. Right, correct answer. We are not offended that you feel that way about Yom Kippur. We also feel that way about Yom Kippur. If someone says to you, Yom Kippur is my favorite holiday, you assume that they're being, sarcastic or facetious or something. Like, no one's favorite holiday is Yom Kippur. Because when you think about Yom Kippur, what do we think about? Fasting, right? This is a day when you are supposed to abstain from everything that is pleasurable. This is a day that you come and you listen to very, very solemn music. You do wear all white, like on Tu B'Av, but the white that you wear on Yom Kippur, right, Michael talked about this a year or two ago in a High Holiday sermon, is supposed to look like the kittel that you wear on your deathbed, right? Yom Kippur is supposed to be a downer. You are supposed to be thinking about your mortality on that day, right? But something in the Talmud says that Yom Kippur and Tu B'Av are the most joyous. So if we're going to understand Tu B'Av, we first have to understand what they're talking about with Yom Kippur. And the answer is this: that for all that most of us think about Yom Kippur is the day where we don't get to eat, and the day that you wear uncomfortable clothes, and all these other things that we feel about Yom Kippur, what Yom Kippur is really about, of course, is forgiveness. Yom Kippur is a holiday where everything we do is supposed to be focused on the act of forgiveness. And there's really two kinds of forgiveness. There's the forgiveness between you and individuals, and there's a historical forgiveness. The forgiveness between you and individuals, whether it is between you and God or whether it's between you and your friends and family, if you've ever really done that real work of tshuva, of trying to dig deep within yourself and figure out what you may have done wrong and actually ask someone for forgiveness and had them accept your apology, you know it does feel good. It is actually an incredibly joyous experience. If you're doing Yom Kippur right and you have that moment where you can forgive someone else and they can forgive you, then it is supposed to be this incredibly enlightening experience. That's the personal forgiveness. But Yom Kippur also marks a historical forgiveness in the Jewish calendar, because Yom Kippur marks the day where we are told that God forgave the Jewish people for the sin of the golden calf. You remember that? That was not a good moment in our history. Everyone went, they built the calf, Moses came down the mountain, he throws down the tablets. Awful time. On Yom Kippur, though, God forgave us for the sin of the golden calf. So we have this wonderful and joyful feeling of the personal forgiveness and the historical forgiveness. Okay. Tu B'Av is also known historically as the day on which the Jewish people were forgiven. On Tu B'Av, we're told, that's the holiday when we are forgiven for another really terrible sin of the Jewish people, the sin of the scouts or the spies. This one maybe isn't quite as well known. We told this story like the second or third week of June. This is the story where the Israelites are getting super close to the promised land, and they're about to go in there, and Moses sends 12 of his best guys to go and check it out. 2 of them come back. They're like, this place is awesome. There's great stuff there. And the other 10 say, oh no, it's horrible. And they scare the people. They fill them with so much fear that God gets incredibly angry. And it's at that time that God decides that anyone who left Egypt and was going to the promised land is going to die in the desert. Now, I don't know about you. This is the kind of thing that rabbis wonder. I always wondered, like, how did they die in the desert? Was it just like all at once? Did they wait there while everyone went to the promised land? So I read a midrash that I never heard before this week. It's a terrible midrash, I'm sorry to say. But what it says is that every year on one date, Tisha B'Av, of course, that every day on Tisha B'Av, if you were 60 years old, you would die. It's like Lord of the Flies, but even worse. And it's like so terrible. So I'm sorry that I shared that midrash, now it's stuck in your head, but that horrible plague where everyone would annually die when they hit 60, that plague was lifted on Tu B'Av. I know, so, whew. Okay. So on Tu B'Av, we have this act of historical forgiveness. So what if the piece that we're missing about Tu B'Av, this holiday of love, is that part of what love is about, part of what makes relationships really work, is forgiveness. It's not the kind of thing that usually we talk about with our partners or with our friends. And I will tell you, and I do still want to hear from the two of you later what has made your marriage work, but I will tell you that we have asked that of many, many couples over the years who we've brought up here for anniversary blessings. No one has ever said forgiveness. But I wonder if maybe that's what it's about. Because we know that even if your best friend, or if your life partner, or if the people in your family who you're so close to, even if they are the best, most perfect people in the world, sometimes we all still screw it up. And when that happens, the most important thing you can have is to have the person who loves you forgive you. Sometimes the act of forgiveness is really even just about being able to forgive yourself for not being the kind of partner you want to be, for not being the kind of friend you want to be, for not being the kind of relative you want to be, but it's this act of forgiveness that makes truly sacred relationships happen. So, as we celebrate Tu B'Av this week, may you look at the people in your life that you love the most. May you celebrate them by forgiving them for those mistakes that they make along the way, allowing them to forgive you as well. And if the forgiveness doesn't quite work, you can also buy them chocolate. Shabbat Shalom. So following our service tonight, we promised a little learning session to continue talking about love and marriage in Judaism. For anyone who wants to join us, it is going to be very casual. It's going to be like 20 minutes, so we would love for you to grab a cookie and a glass of wine. We'll be meeting in the boardroom over there, so we can tell you a little bit more about love and marriage.
In the Jewish tradition.
In the Jewish tradition, exactly. But until then, let's first continue our service, and I'll ask you to rise on page 282 for the Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'tzeit gedula liotzer breshit, shelo asanu kigoyei ha'artzot, velo samanu kamishpachot ha'adama, shelo samchalkenu kahem, v'gor aleinu kechol amonam, va'anachnu korim, ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. On page 287, ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו
At this point in our service, our thoughts turn to those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked. and those of every race and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and death.
And so we recall with love the names of those taken from us in recent days, and our hearts go out to their families in sympathy as we recall their names: Roger Goldman, Dorothy Dottie Singer Jacobs, Carl Nablock, Thomas Starr Sobel, Celine Spencer. And we now recall the names of those, the anniversary of whose death occurs on this Shabbat, and whose names have been inscribed in the archives of our congregation or on the Wall of Honor for perpetual memorial: Eileen Aronson, Mamie Benson, Ruthie Saxberger, Harold Brown, Jacob Finn, Bessie Finkelstein, Ira Robert Fishbein, Helen Rose Fried, Alan L. Garber, Marcus Goldman, Meyer Lewis Katz, Ray Kaufman, Emily Evans Klein, Hilda Kraus, Isidore Kronik, Ben Landauer, Henry Landauer, Max Littman, Alan Margulis, Barbara Rubin Margulis, Sarah Michelson, Mildred Perlutsky Penner, Arthur Poger, Nettie Ritchie, Ray Rubenstein, Edith Crockett Rubin, Lillian Sarner, Edwin Sheely, Helene Shukot, William Seltzer, Gerald Steiner, Grace Levin Tryman, Louis Washauer, Charles Weiss, David Harvey Weiss, Moses Wolfheim, Jesse Wolfort, Dolly Yowitz, Joseph Yowitz Sr., Stanley Yowitz, and Hannah Zeev. So with these names and the names we keep in our hearts, we turn to the words of the Mourner's Kaddish on 294.
Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, ba'alma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uvyomechon u'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam u'olmei almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dekudisha b'richu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiram ba'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, Hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'emru amen. May the source of peace and peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. And we say, Amen.
Oseh shalom b'mromav, Hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, Ve'imeru, Amen.
So as Rabbi Michael and I were planning what we would talk about afterwards, and again, you don't have to come, but it will be very easy and fun. We'll be in the boardroom right there, so you can either go out those doors, or if you want to go that way and get a snack and something to drink first, you can. But when we were planning it, we realized that there was a distinctly Fiddler on the Roof theme to what we wanted to talk about with Jewish views of love and marriage, so we thought we'd end with a little fiddler as well.
May the Lord protect and defend you. May God always shield you from shame. May you come to be in Israel a shining name. May you be like Ruth and like Esther. May you be deserving of praise. Strengthen them, O Lord, and keep them from the stranger's ways.
May God bless you and grant you long
May the
life.
Lord fulfill our Sabbath prayer for you.
May God keep you and shield you from
May God in God's wisdom always care for you.
May the Lord protect and defend.
May the Lord protect and defend
May God
you.
always shield you from
May
shame.
God always shield you from shame.
Favor us, O Lord,
Favor us, O
with
Lord,
happiness and
with
peace.
happiness. So hear our Sabbath prayer. Amen.
Shabbat Shalom.
Should I run this into the office, or should I run this in the office? Just